Welcome again, everyone. We are back with our latest TweakTown weekly podcast covering the week just gone in technology. It's me, Anthony Greffer, here with Chris Smith, and our first subject for our tech podcast is ASRock's latest motherboard that they teased during the week, the X99WS-E/10G. It's an insane motherboard with quad LAN, and quad LAN might not sound like a lot, but we're talking about 4 Ethernet ports. And with 4 Ethernet ports, you can do a crazy amount of stuff. But the best bit that they actually have with the board is that you can actually bind up those 4 Ethernet ports. So you've got two 10 gigabit Ethernet ports and two 1 gigabit Ethernet ports. So you've got a total of 22 gigabit speeds in networking. You can actually bind those all together to have 22 gigabits a second of networking bandwidth. So it's pretty insane. But not only that, you can actually have multiple cards in SLI Crossfire. So you can have four-way SLI, four-way Crossfire with 16 times on every single slot ready to go. Or you can go single and go ×8 all the way through if you're putting in, RAID expansion cards, or if you're putting in whatever cards. You can have 10 sound cards or 10 basic video cards for super amounts of outputs. You can have up to 128 gig of DDR4 RAM, 12 SATA 6 gigabit ports, an eSATA port, a SATA Express port, SATA DOM, M.2 support, and support for PCI 2.0 times 4. Do you want this board, Chris?
Not necessarily for me, but it's some pretty amazing features. I mean, LAN like this, we're going to see, hard drives especially be the bottleneck now, instead of, I remember back in the day trying to transfer 10 megasecond across your old 10 meg your 10 meg network connections and that kind of stuff, but with 22 gig a second, it's going to introduce new bottlenecks, I guess.
I think you're right. Like, if you're at a LAN and you're able to have 4 networking ports, and most LANs are in a gigabit, but if just say you had 10 gig, you're going to be doing an insane amount of transfers. Like, you're transferring at 200 and something megabytes a second of your network, which is just insane.
Yep, yeah, definitely. They released, was it ASRock as well that released one similar to this with dual Xenon chips available in it as well?
I think they did, yeah, for like a enterprise kind of class.
Yeah, a few servers and stuff. But like you said as well, if this is obviously meant to be a consumer type board, most networks are gigabit anyway, so I think it's a lot of just a marketing, kind of thing to bring out.
I think it is. Well, it's just like for us, just getting onto a headline. That's an insane speed. I said 200 megabytes a second before. I actually meant 2 gigabytes a second. So you're also talking about, you're limited by your hard drives. Like, even if you were writing at that and reading at that, like, you'd have to have another machine that's capable of doing. And that's 2 gigabytes a second. That's not like an easy task. That's quite
insane. For sure. If you're working at home with your general, what do most people have these days, really like a 4-port router. Say you take up 2 of those ports, and that's 2 gig out of your 22 gig capabilities. Yeah. But still, it's an impressive board. It looks quite nice too. Just looking at the article here, I got it open. Yeah, it's definitely a nice looking board as well.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a good looking board. We should actually I might try the screen sharing, and we will show you the board itself if you haven't actually seen it. So there's the board there. So you're actually seeing the board, like we said, you've actually got 2 gigabit ports, and then you've got 2 10 gig. They're both powered by Intel controllers. But yeah, you're looking at an insane motherboard with 4 SLI, with Crossfire. Again, you've got a 2 PLX PX 8747 bridges there, so you can do the 4-way Crossfire and SLI through maximum speed. So not that there's a huge difference from using 16 times, like, it's not like it doubles over 8 or is 3 or 4 times faster than 2 or 4, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your ASRock board. Next up, we saw during the week, Michael wrote that Anonymous actually released documents on KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Their leader, he released. So their leader is what's his name? His real name. Frank Ancona, the KKK Imperial Wizard. They actually leaked his address, phone number, social security number, credit card information, and other with his wife. Anonymous said that they might also target government websites and infrastructure in Missouri in order to respond to the grand jury failing to indict the officer Darren Wilson from the Ferguson event. So it's pretty crazy what's going on, but this is obviously part of the mission that I guess Anonymous has been on since day one. I guess it's kind of good that they're not targeting the general public, even though this person is a part of the general public, but he is a member of the KKK, which isn't exactly the most rainbow and lollipops and fun clan that there is out there.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy, but this is all part of the hashtag OPKKK or Operation KKK campaign against members of the clan in Missouri. After the group challenged Anonymous. So, of course, Anonymous aren't going to sit there and twiddling their thumbs going, oh, no worries, we'll be threatened and not respond. So there you are. Would you be scared if you were a member of the KKK, Chris?
Yeah, I reckon I wouldn't want to go against Anonymous, let's be honest. Like, I've heard lots of stories, even stories of, like, Counter-Strike players in Australia who've done similar things like this. They've stolen someone's credit card information and ordered like 3 tons of sand to be delivered onto their driveway and things like that. Like, besides obviously, ruining your life, they can do some crazy things. But, the KKK is pretty stupid to fight against them. I remember I read an article that they were saying, Anonymous's threats have been received and we're laughing at them. I bet you can't do anything, kind of no, you can't catch me kind of thing. And then like 3 hours later, the KKK's Twitter's been hacked and taken over by Anonymous. Like, they're not someone you want to make enemies with. They've done some good things in the past, but, besides that.
Well, I think these days, I think people look at Anonymous or looking at like the hacking kind of collective kind of groups or even just general hackers like, oh, it's okay, I'm safe. But it's almost like, say, if you were to piss off the KKK, they're not just going to come to your house, like obviously from Missouri to Australia. They're not going to come and get us. But if you lived close to them, they might come and retaliate. But Anonymous can attack you no matter where you are. Everyone has a credit card or at least a bank account or a driver's license or a passport or something. If they hack into one of those systems and play around with, you're a criminal, so the next time you are a criminal, but you say me, they go in and file a felony in the police database, and then I go to the airport next time and I'm arrested on site. Like, that's a kind of retaliation I wouldn't want, because how am I going to prove that wrong? Or Anonymous hacked my account and added in these charges on me. It was not me. It's like, yeah, they can really play with people's lives, like really deeply into their lives.
Yeah, everything's tech these days.
It is.
Exactly.
It really is. Continuing with tech, we had AMD, well, not AMD, but there was a tease of AMD's upcoming Radeon R9 300 series, otherwise known as the Captain Jack GPU. So we've been posting about this for a while, but this card, the latest benchmarks have arrived. The source is ChipHurl, and someone actually ran a bunch of tests that you can see here, the game tests. So you got Alien Isolation, Assassin's Creed Unity, Battlefield 4, the new Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Crysis 3, Dragon Age Inquisition, Far Cry 4, Metro Last Light, Rise, Son of Rome, Tomb Raider, Watch Dogs, and a couple of other games. They tested it between all the video cards that are pretty much the dominant cards on the market, so GTX 770 right up to GTX 980, the R9295X2. And you see that the Captain Jack sample, it might look low, but these are all Crossfire and SLI setups, but the Captain Jack sample actually beat out the GTX 980 by close to 20%, which is actually really, really good considering the power efficiency of the card is actually a lot lower. So you can see here the R9 290X is using 279 watts of power, but the Captain Jack sample is actually only using 197 watts of power, which is actually really good. It's still above what the Maxwell-based GTX 980 uses, but not by much. You're only talking 12 watts, which is not even 10%. So that's actually pretty exciting. A lot of people probably would skip over that, but this is actually big news, because if this is true, that means AMD have a very, very surprising card on their hands. And I think that if they were to release that right now, again, they're months away from releasing this, so they're going to have a lot more work. They're going to get the heat down, which is going to reduce the power draw, which is going to reduce noise. Once all that's reduced, they can start working on maybe modifying the cooler slightly towards the end, working with third-party companies to release better coolers. But we're finally seeing AMD catch up after AMD really pretty much dominated the end of last year and the beginning of this year. The GTX 780, 780 Ti, GTX Titan were all good cards, but AMD really had it nailed down with the Hawaii cards for most of the year. And NVIDIA's come in and swooped that up this year with the GTX 970, 980. There's no denying that they are good cards. AMD have even admitted that they're good cards, which is good to see. It's not the competition going, oh, they're crappy cards, don't go out and buy them. But I think we'll see the Radeon R9 390X hopefully released in the first quarter of next year.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It's really good to see how, as a whole, like the wattage draw as well as the heat have been going down, especially since like the 4 series NVIDIA cards, for example, got some personal experience at events and having PCs in cupboards with that kind of stuff and burning my hand like trying to undo screws on the back of cases and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely good to see here. And if you look at the ratings, like you're saying as well, it looks a bit low. It's about midfield, but it gets what, 10 less FPS than 2 GTX 780s in SLI.
Which is pretty good. Like if you think like what's the 2 GTX? If I go to Amazon quickly, if you look at GTX, this is going to be the first result. I'm going to give you the first result. So GTX 780, even on Amazon, you're looking at say about $350 roughly, and that's for an EVGA superclock card. No, that's GTX 970. Sorry, GTX 780, still $500. So they're pretty much gone now. But let's say you found one secondhand for $350. Like that's 2 of them. So you're looking at $600 or $700 of value there. And the Radeon R9 390X, I doubt is going to launch for more than what the GTX 980 is. So you're probably looking at like $600 ish.
Yeah, and if you scroll down a little bit as well,
but that's pretty good.
If you scroll down a little bit as well, you notice the Captain Jack's running at just under 50% of the power as well, or just over 50% of the power consumption of those two.
Which means it's going to be 2 of those. It's going to be a really interesting setup, especially for games that that use a lot of VRAM, like Battlefield 4, and obviously Assassin's Creed Unity requires 2 or 3 supercomputers to run at like 720p. So we might actually find a GPU that can actually run Assassin's Creed Unity at normal frame rates, which might be.
There is a game test here of Assassin's Creed Unity as well. Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, well, I think all those numbers are actually an average of all the benchmarks in one.
Yep.
So that's actually pretty good, like to see AMD hopefully catch up. Speaking of AMD, we have the GTX. I don't know why I'm confusing GTX today with AMD. We were one of the first. I think we were actually the first to cover AMD's upcoming or maybe upcoming Radeon R9 490X. So what you've just seen back, what we were talking about before, was the Captain Jack GPU, which is I think part of the company's Sea Islands range of cards that are coming out, which are going to be the 300 series. But the new Radeon R9 490X is actually, or will hopefully be the successor to the 390X. So we're already talking a generation ahead of the next gen of cards. But what makes the 390X special is that this is 390X, not 490X. What actually makes a 390X special is that it has a technology called high bandwidth memory from SK Hynix, which is HBM. HBM is going to have a massive amount of bandwidth. So right now the R9 290X has memory bandwidth of 512 bit. The GTX 980, which I run a couple of those now, they're great cards. They have a memory bus of 256 bit. So the memory bus isn't really important, but it does help in high res, like 4K or triple 4K or above. Like we've got 5K monitors coming out in the next couple of months from Dell and that kind of stuff. Apple have got a 5K screen out, but the 490X should be running HBM 2.0. HBM 2.0 increases pretty much everything by pretty much 2 times. So you're going to have not only going to have a massive amount of memory bandwidth, but you're going to have massive amounts of power. So if the 390X is what we said before, we're like a massive amount faster than the 290X, the 490X should be that same leap. It should be close to twice as fast. So where we have the 290X is about 320 gigabytes a second of memory bandwidth. So 512 megabit bus with 4 gig of RAM. The R9 390X will have a 4096 bit bus. So you're looking at about 640 gigabytes a second bandwidth. Comparing that to a GTX 980, which has under half of that, I think it's about 256 gigabytes a second. And then you're looking at the R9 490X should have 1.28 terabytes a second. So you're going up from gigabytes. So again, 290X has about 320 gigabytes a second. You're looking at 4 times that, which is just, it doesn't even sound like, I don't even understand. It doesn't even sound like it's going to be coming out because we're moving away from gigabytes a second now to terabytes a second in memory bandwidth.
It's the hard drive race all over again, right?
It really is, yeah.
Gigabytes to terabytes in just a matter of a couple of years. It's interesting, like what you noted as well about being able to stream, being able to have a few 4K screens and stuff like that as well, because there's one thing that I like that these guys have taken definitely into account is the fact that almost everybody has 2 screens these days as well. You know, like you use 2 screens, I use 2, and I think I'm about to upgrade to 3 screens even and things like that. So it's good to see that these graphics cards are, you know, I think that's besides obviously wanting to win the race and the benchmarks and stuff, it's one thing that's going to filter down just to the average user even. That's going to be able to help us out quite a lot more.
Well, I think that we don't really need that bandwidth now. But like you said, it will filter down. Maybe this would be obviously for the enthusiasts, for people like you and I that might grab one of these cards for playing those games at 4K or above. But I think again, like maybe the next generation of games that come out, they might benefit more from this. But I wrote in the article that I think that we're probably gonna see that amount of bandwidth is most likely going to be wasted on today's games because again they're built on consoles which have very, very limited bandwidth because they're only APUs compared to something like this where this kind of card will be 10 times faster than what the Xbox One and PS4 are without a problem. But for something like the Oculus Rift where you can actually you're rendering 2 eyes, so you're rendering pretty much 2 monitors at 1440p. So it's hard enough now to run 1440p. I have a 1440p screen. So I've got a Asus ROG Swift to my left here. So that's 2560 by 1440 at 144 hertz. So for me to run that at 144 frames a second as something like Battlefield 4, I can't do it. There's no way I can do it at ultra graphics because the scaling on 2 or 3 or 4 cards doesn't work. You only get 30 or 40% scaling towards 4 cards. But on a single card, that's different. But then moving to the Oculus Rift, where I'm able to render left and right eye with a single card, that's going to be the potential of that is absolutely massive because that's going to be probably the one big driving force behind increasing the amount of graphics horsepower you need versus just rendering it onto your LCD panel. So the Oculus Rift is most likely going to ship with a 1440p display at 90 hertz or above. So you're going to need, with an LCD monitor, it doesn't matter if it's frame per second blur and you get motion sickness. Like if you're moving and it's lagging behind and you're not receiving 90 frames a second minimum, you feel that, you see it straight away. It will hurt your eyes. So I think, we're going to see maybe a bigger collaboration between graphics card companies and Oculus, hopefully. I have Android 5.0 Lollipop. So during the week, the new update from Google was reaching the NVIDIA Shield Tablet LTE version. So NVIDIA have 2 of the Shield tablets available. They've got the Shield Tablet, which is just the normal Wi-Fi only edition, and then they've got the Shield Tablet LTE. So Android 5.0 Lollipop actually started hitting the LTE version of the Shield tablet, and as well as the Galaxy S5 and Galaxy Note 4 as well. It was spotted during the week on those 2 slates, or those 2 smartphones, I should say, which we should see hopefully released before the end of the year. So if you've got a Galaxy S5 or a Galaxy Note 4, they will be released, or the update will be released before the end of the year. What phone are you running, Chris?
S4 currently.
So you should get an update soon-ish.
I will. Yeah, the Lollipop's been very, very well received. I remember reading an article about the mute function not working that was apparently getting patched out pretty soon. I'm not sure if that's been patched out yet or not. Unless you like restart your phone, turn it off and on, then you can mute your phone. But besides that, I've read a whole lot of reports that have said that Lollipop's just changed the game completely. It's the first update from Android that's seen them really work on something that the users want. Besides, the back end stuff that Android's known really well for. They've brought it to more of the public sphere, and it'll be interesting to see how that battles also against Apple, because a lot of people like the Apple stuff just because it looks cool. A lot of the stuff swishes and flicks and things like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see as Lollipop's rolled out across more devices and then starts coming, pre-installed on devices getting released as well, like Linzhoff's new i8 device and things like that I've written about previously.
Well, I think like the update that Apple released, that iOS 8 and 8.1, that had so many problems versus not whoever's gotten Android 5.0 Lollipop, they haven't really complained so far. So the update and
Yep.
the rollout has actually been pretty good, pretty flawless so far from what I've read.
Yeah, it's definitely been good because I think from my perspective, from talking to a lot of people who aren't necessarily into tech, it seems like Android's the more like geeky, nerdy, really solid back end, doesn't look quite as nice on the interface kind of thing. Whereas Apple's more just like it just works kind of stuff. It's swishy and things look cool, and opening and closing apps is a fun experience. But it looks like Android's now trying to tackle both of those aspects. Plus, with Apple having a few issues, we've already seen a ton of articles on TweakTown about Android dominating Apple, even across like Black Friday sales and things like that. So, yeah, it's another good solid move for Android, especially.
I think it's good, and it's Android 5.0 actually uses less resources as well. So normally you look at Apple, like their latest iOS 8 only works on specific, like the latest kind of iPhones. You can't just go back and install it on a 3G or 3GS iPhone,
Mhm.
where you can kind of do that with it 5.0, like it'll eventually roll out to many more devices. So more people can actually benefit from Google's latest operating system.
Yeah, and I heard from that it comes with 1 times less U2 album as well.
Oh, I don't like you two like as it is, but I just wouldn't want that forced on me. So I'm glad
Yeah,
it doesn't happen.
exactly.
Speaking of forcing, we didn't actually
Good
plan this,
segue.
but it works well. A new robot is now milking cows. Yes, a robot is milking cows. I don't know how we've gotten to this point of humanity, but at least if aliens do land somewhere on the planet, we can at least say that yeah, we now have robots milking our cows. So Michael wrote an article during the week. He started off with a good tag like "Work smarter, not harder," including on the farm, which are embracing robotics and technology. So Mark reported that some dairy farmers are actually deploying robots that are milking cows much more efficiently and much faster than what normal farmers can do, which then frees up their time to do other things around the farm. Which is great. The machines do cost a decent amount of money, so $640,000, as well as the required barn renovations that you need to do to your various multiple barns, depending on how many you've got. So you're looking at about $800,000 to $1 million to do this. But if you're a farm that's making that kind of money, the investment would be huge. But yeah, the farmers can actually feed the cows while they're being milked on their own schedule. So that's actually really really cool to see this. I don't know about the I guess the effects on the animals. I'm against cruelty to animals, but they're going to be milked anyway. So as long as it's as safe as milking with hands or whatever tools they use now, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. And like they said, the cows can be fed at the same time, and two birds with one stone. It just reminds me of those meme images. Has science gone too far?
Yeah, I think it has. Like, it's science has gone too far, but like I said, like if you're using a hand, and eventually the technology will get to the point where it'll most likely be better for robots to do it because they'll eventually build some super soft way of doing it, like maybe a soft glove that goes around the teat, whatever it's called.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, at the
I'm a tech
moment,
guy, not a farm guy.
from what I understand, the cows come in and they attach suction things that look like this, but it's the person that has to like put all the suction stuff on the cows while they're trying to dodge being kicked in the face and stuff like that. There's a few
Okay.
documentaries on it actually.
Wow. See, I can't say I've watched a documentary around cows being milked.
No, it was a documentary from Vice actually about immigrant workers in America doing the jobs that no one else wants to do.
Okay.
Because
They
that's
have
another
some
interesting thing as well,
documentaries.
was that this whole thing was based around no one actually wants to do cow stuff because you just get covered in cow dung all day, and like 50% of their job is not getting kicked in the face, and 50% of their job is just shoveling cow crap into a drain the whole time.
Yeah.
So if you've got a machine that does it all for you,
Yeah.
then
Or
you don't have
robots
to
not
pay
getting
it to work.
employed.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. Unless they're
Speak
interstellar.
again. They seem to yeah, exactly, yeah, that's right. Stella did explain that right. Speaking of cow seem to be kind of gelling into each other, and again, we're not doing this deliberately. But James Cameron says now, kids turn like put your hands over your ears. James Cameron says that you're going to quote unquote shit yourself over the new Avatar sequels. So you might have watched Avatar a couple of years ago. It came out like 11 billion years ago now. But he's still working on 3 sequels, not 1, not 2, but 3 sequels to Avatar. So they're going to be shot back to back and released back to back. Starting, I think, next year. So December 2016, the year after, December 2016, December 2017, December 2018. But he had a talk with Empire Magazine where he said, he was talking about the sequels to Avatar, and he said, I can tell you one thing about them, be bitching. You shit myself with my mouth wide open. But I'm looking forward to the sequels. I think that again, they're not pushing technological boundaries. Like, wow, they're going to have cool special effects, but that's just special effects. Like, that's not everything. Where I really wish James Cameron would push the frame rate. I'm sick of the 24 frames a second, the cinematic feel that we have. I really wish that would be increased to a minimum of 60 to 1080p 60, which I think should be the standard for filmmaking. It looks what do they say? It looks what did they say? It looks like a soap opera. That's it. It has a soap opera feel, but it would be smoother. And we've got all these TVs now that are limited to 24 frames a second. If we had them moving at 60, it'd be better. James Cameron was actually rumored to be filming the Avatar sequels at 60 or even 120 frames a second, which would be awesome. But he's confirmed he's shooting at 48. So he said, my thinking at the time was that 60 frames a second might be a better seg to the video market. I've been plugging into a system that's a little more mature, so it makes sense for me to do 48 frames at this point. And James Cameron's getting old. I think he's like 60-something years old, so I don't see him ever getting to the point of doing 60 or 120 frames a second in movies.
I mean, like, just expanding what you were saying, for example, like gaming streams, if anyone's watched a stream online, a lot of the basic streams are at 30 FPS, and then I've watched a stream before which has basically said, it was halfway through a tournament, I think it was the first half of the game of CSGO, it was like Fnatic versus someone else way back when CSGO was released, and they did the first half in 30 FPS, and they've said, so they've said basically, we've upgraded our infrastructure, we're going to turn the stream off now, turn it back on at 60 FPS, and it came back on at 60, and it just blew my mind. And I've got a crappy ADSL2, like that kind of stuff, and it just looked amazing. It'd be good to see movies, and like you were saying, we've got all these TVs out that are 3D, 3D ready and that kind of stuff that can run at 120 FPS. Why aren't these AAA plus movie titles, being released in that kind of stuff? But hey, it's interesting to see Avatar anyway. I made the big mistake of watching Avatar not in 3D at one stage. My parents have like a cinema room at their house, and I watched it Blu-ray quality, not 3D, and I just about fell asleep, I think. So this time I'm going to have to go for the 3D option.
Well, I would have wanted to see the high detail. Like, I'm obviously, as you know, I'm in Adelaide, and I flew over to Melbourne last week to watch. I specifically flew over to Melbourne to watch Interstellar in 70mm IMAX because it's one of the biggest cinemas in the world. And that was absolutely incredible. I really wish that I wrote notes during the movie. I would love to have had a private session with a little light where I can actually write notes. Because that blew my mind because there's so much detail. It felt like you were going from like 480p YouTube to 1080p 60. It was just and you're doing that again from normal cinema to up to 70mm IMAX. The amount of detail was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. It was the best detail, the best movie I've seen in terms of detail and quality. And I wish that more movies are like that. So I wish that James Cameron was, I'm just going to do 60 and then scale it down. If you film a 60, you've already got 60. Then you can just scale down to 24. You can just have it recorded at 60 and then scale it to all the cinemas that don't do 60 FPS, do it at 24. Release it online at 1080p 60. Change the cinema model instead of releasing these movies over here in Australia. If you go to like an extreme screen, which is we got a cinema chain over here called Hoyts. You go to an extreme screen session, it's like $24 Australian, which is what, $26, $27 US for a movie. That's ridiculous. America are paying $7 to $10 for a ticket. An increased demand. It's costing up 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's not good.
Yep, exactly.
Moving on, we have Michael wrote another article about a hacker escaping a 440-year sentence in jail. Fidel Salinas was a 28-year-old Texas man. He was actually filed with 44 felony counts of computer fraud and cyber stalking, where he faced 10 years of jail per count. So 10 times 44 is 440 years in jail. Fidel actually had suspected ties with Anonymous, but he pled guilty to one misdemeanor count of computer fraud and abuse, and he will hopefully just be having a $10,000 fine versus the 440 years in jail. So he'll have 1 year in jail, but his lawyer is going to fight for that and obviously try and escape the prison sentence and just have him pay the $10,000 fine, which is a pretty hefty fine.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to go from 440 years to one.
Yeah, well, could you imagine being in that room? You're like, oh, like again, people. That's what I don't really get with the law. I don't really want to rewrite the law, but to me, if I've hacked someone and it's computer fraud and cyber stalking, yes, that's bad. I'm not trying to say it's not. But come on, people go out and murder or rape and they get like 10, 20 years. How can you get 440 years for doing something that didn't really physically, like if I go and get drunk and I hit someone, and because I'm drunk, it wasn't me. So some people get away with it, and they spend maybe 10 years in jail, or maybe a year or two, and they've literally murdered someone on the street. Like that is murder. You've killed someone. But 440 years of make him do community service for a couple of years, or join the FBI or NSA and go, okay, well, we'll use your skills for something. You're able to do all of this. Well, why don't you work for us?
Yeah.
So speaking about laws, President Obama signed in the new e-label law. So if you don't know what the e-label law is, on the back of your smartphone, depending on what you've got, on the iPhone, for example, you'll actually have FCC labels. So it'll tell you obviously what parts of the FCC has actually approved. So these smartphones from now on, so that's a Samsung and BlackBerry. These are cool phones, so they don't have FCC labels on them, but they will be removed going into the future. I had to throw it in there, man. I have to do it. So it's good. It's not like it's big and newsworthy, but it's good because the iPhone, like again, this is such a clean phone. Like it just has a Sony logo. This is a BlackBerry phone. It just has a BlackBerry logo. I like that look. It's just plain. It's beautiful. Where the iPhone has this, all these like weird FCC logos. It's like, well, why? Like I don't need to have that.
It's not the iPhone's design terminology either. If you look at MacBook Airs, for example, look how simple they are. And we've seen companies like ASUS follow the same stuff with their Ultrabooks, the same kind of styling, and that's what Apple's meant to be about: simple and clean. Polished metal.
Exactly. That's what I don't understand. So for people who might not have an iPhone, I'm going to show you a picture. So you see there. So that's from our review on the iPhone 6 Plus. So underneath where it says iPhone, obviously you've got a bunch of FCC IDs, and then you've got logos down the bottom. So President Obama's e-label act will actually have those labels not being required to be printed onto the phone, which is good. Quick story about the CEO of LG. He stepped down a couple of days ago citing health problems. He is being replaced in the interim. He's being replaced by Juno Cho from LG's holding company. But the company has been posting record highs lately, or record high sales, I should say, record highs. Increased profits, but a change of leadership could actually help that. Look at Samsung. They've had the same leadership for a while now. So we might see, hopefully, a shift with LG. Hopefully, maybe.
There's LG is the one that's creating new business parks as well. I remember reading a few articles and stuff about all over Korea. They're massive, acres and acres worth of business parks. Yeah, they've definitely come a long way, especially in like the phone market and things like that as well. They're starting to become
good
major.
phones. Like they've got the G3 is a really good handset. The G2 is a good handset. G2 Pro. The G Flex wasn't too bad. The G Flex 2 is supposedly coming out. Or is going to be unveiled at CES, which is a month from now. So we'll see LG hopefully dominate more next year. I think you're seeing Samsung kind of come down a little bit now, and they've already announced that they're going to have less offerings for smartphones next year. But we might see a change from LG. So let's hope so.
Yeah.
Speaking about Asia, the Xbox boss in Japan has resigned, citing poor sales of the Xbox One in Japan. So his name is Takashi Sensei or Sensu. Has stepped down. Obviously, really bad sales of the Xbox One in Japan. I didn't know how bad it was until I started looking into it. So since the Xbox One launched in Japan in September, Microsoft has sold 38,461 consoles. So it's rounded up to 38,000, or rounded down to 38,000. But 23,562 of those were sold in the first week. So Microsoft have only sold 15,000 Xbox Ones since it launched. So they actually sold more on the first week than they have in the 12 weeks that's passed after that. So even though he stepped down, he's resigned from his position, but he's now going to move over to Redmond, Washington, in the United States, and he's going to be the GM for the Interactive Entertainment Business Unit for Microsoft.
It was interesting. One of my friends who I play games with in my mumble was explaining to another friend about this, actually, when I jumped in there yesterday to play some Dota, and he was saying, I think it was like he sold like 140 got sold in the week before he left, or something, like a really low number like that. And his analogy was that's basically like me selling one kazoo. It's what it's equivalent to. But Japan, it's interesting about it because I just wonder how much the changes is going to make a change to Xbox sales, because you look at Japan, it's so Nintendo and Sony focused. Is Microsoft going to be able to break in, even with the new CEOs? Are you going to come up with some fantastical new idea that they haven't thought about before? Or, is there more problems in the fact that maybe he's not managing his staff properly, or things like that?
Well, I think it's like they just have a different games market. Microsoft have always had problems in Japan just because of the localized content. They have a different flavor for games, and I don't think Microsoft cater to that. And I think that it's not necessarily this guy's fault or maybe his team. It's just Microsoft. Like, they're launching into a market. Like, you can't have the same success in the United States as you do Australia, as you do Denmark, as you do Germany, as you do Japan or China or South Korea. Look at South Korea. I'm sure that if you looked at the sales of but the use of League of Legends and Dota 2 and those kind of MOBA games versus Halo or Assassin's Creed, they're going to be massive in the States, and they're not going to be as big in South Korea or China or Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Microsoft needs to be with their strengths. They almost need to have full-on localized Xboxes. That's the way it is. Like, look at the PlayStation games. Like, look at some of the only made in Japan games. They're insane. They don't never make them out to the States, and that's been the same since the Sega days, since the original Nintendo days.
There was even the editions, even the Sony, the Sony PlayStation 4 special editions that only released in Japan as well. Like, not even games, direct consoles and stuff. But it's also the Microsoft exclusives, which is what a few of my friends were saying as well. Like, a lot of the Japanese market don't want to play Halo and things like that. And, Halo hasn't had, besides the remake, basically, because that's what the latest release is, Halo's been down quite a lot recently as well for the past few releases. So, yeah, and exactly like you're saying. You can't, it's just, you can't release a free-to-play MMO kawaii kind of game in America, so how can you expect to release, Halo and Call of Duty massively in Japan, for example? It's all about different markets, different flavors.
Yeah, no, I hope maybe Microsoft will change that, but we'll see. Going back to the States, we have seen Starbucks announce that they're going to be using mobile wireless chargers in their coffee shops. So it's going to start off with the San Francisco Bay Area. They're going to roll out wireless charging stations with a collaboration and partnership with PowerMat Technologies. So only specific tablets and smartphones will obviously be compatible, but it's good to see that they're actually supporting wireless chargers. I'm a massive, massive advocate of wireless chargers. I try to use them wherever I can. I used to use an Nexus 5, which I exclusively used with a Tilt VU wireless charger, which I absolutely loved. Absolutely love that charger. It was like a 45-degree angle, so I could get into bed and I could just slot it on and charge it, and wake up in the morning, it's fully charged. But Starbucks is good. Like, you can pop in for a coffee, slot your phone down, let it charge up. But I think that kind of push is hopefully going to push Apple to have wireless charging. I think I'm going to use the word pathetic that Apple haven't done wireless charging on their devices yet. I think it's really, really poor that they haven't, considering that people like Samsung and LG and Sony and more have got wireless charging built into their smartphones. I think something like this will push Apple. It's a big enough company to actually have Apple go, maybe we should have wireless charging.
Yeah, like you're saying, wireless charging is definitely Definitely an amazing thing. Like one of my friends, Jeremy, he uses a Luxor 2 wireless charger at home. Get home, sit your phone on your desk, and it creates it reduces, sorry, the opposite it creates, reduces the problem of plugging in and unplugging and stuff like that. That's one thing that I've discussed with some people before is that, there's the way that the cables plug and unplug, it's so fickle. Like the mini USB ports are so small, and I've broken, I buy most of my cables just from Chinese websites for like $1, but the amount of cables that I've gone through just by my phone falling off the table and it snapping and things like that, this is definitely next gen technology that we need to look into. And like you said, Apple needs to support that.
Yeah.
100%. There's no reason for them not to.
Well, it's the benefits are top to bottom. Like my dad doesn't have the best eyesight, and he has a Galaxy S4, and Patriot sent me a one of their kind of fuel ion chargers. So it's
Hmm.
like a case that goes around. So you take the back shell off of the Galaxy S4, so the back of it, and then you just put the charger actually on, and then it's like a shell case, and then you actually get a dock. So he just puts that on and slots it straight onto his phone sits in the case, which keeps it nice and safe as well. So he gets to his desk next to his computer, slots it straight onto the charger. It's great because
Yep.
for him, like I looked at the Galaxy S4 and down or on his phone on the I should try on the BlackBerry, on the micro USB port. It's just you just see scratches on the left and right where he's obviously just gone like to put it in, and everyone does it. Like you don't get it in, especially after a year of using it. You charge it once or twice a day. That's 700, maybe 1,000 times you've plugged that cable in. And it's just scratches to the side where, if you've got a wireless charger, you never need to plug it. Like my Nexus 5, I barely ever plugged it in. I just use a wireless charger, slap and go.
Yep.
It makes a big change to the way you actually use and charge a device. Like at night, when I went over to America, I would go to a party. I've had a couple of drinks, go back to my hotel. All I want to do is just go to sleep, put my phone, just dock my phone, go to sleep. Versus in the dark, I'm like trying to find the charger and nah, it doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's old technology that needs to be
It really
phased out.
is. It does. It does. I think micro, like the reversible USB, is great. Like that finally coming in, but too little, too late. Apple's Lightning charger is great, but I don't know why they don't offer Lightning and then offer a Lightning wireless version where you can just buy. Maybe don't make it default. Or I think if Apple do it, they're going to have to make it default by giving wireless chargers in the box, but that probably cuts into their profits. So. Speaking about profits, we'll quickly cover a couple of the Black Friday sales, or maybe not specifically Black Friday, but for the last week. So AMD's Radeon R9 295X2, the dual GPU card, can actually be found on Amazon for as low as $679. So it's about 40, I think it was 40% off, about $200 or $300 off, which is a huge drop. But obviously you can't get it for that price anymore. Sorry if you got excited and then now can't get it. Dell's 28-inch 4K monitor. They actually had that on sale a couple of days ago on Cyber Monday for $299, which is just absolutely insane. If I got in quick enough, I would have bought 3 for triple 4K gaming. But the 4K monitor that Dell sell is only 30 hertz. So I wouldn't recommend that to any gamers at all.
Yep.
Even though Ubisoft will probably eventually upgrade to 4K 30 hertz, they won't go to 60 hertz probably for the next 10 or maybe even 20 or 30 years. So
Yep.
again, had to kind of throw that in.
For sure.
Speaking of video card,
It's
sorry.
interesting. Sorry, it's interesting to see some of those sales as well because, contrary to what a lot of what people know, people like we said in the games podcast we did before. I'm from the manufacturing scene for the past 3 or 4 years or so, and people don't understand how little the profit margins are in a lot of these cases as well. So to see, I open up the 295X2 article and stuff like that, 679 down from the introductory price of what was it, 1.4K, 1.5K. Like that's a lot of discount. If you're looking for something like that, brand new graphics cards that get released on day one, singular graphics cards without water coolers and stuff in them, they're released for about $600-700 as well. So interesting to see a lot of these sales going on. Even like the Amazon fighting against price matching Best Buy and online and things like that as well. And yeah, it's crazy sales.
I just wish that we had that here in Australia. Like we have the worst retailers in the world, like JB Hi-Fi and That's about it. Like what Dick Smith doesn't really compete. But yeah, we don't have like we've got Amazon. Like they ship some of their stock to us. Um, but yeah, like Americans complain sometimes that things are expensive. But move to Australia, mate. We'll see how things go. Like it sucks over
Come
here
truck
for
a
stuff.
shrimp on the barbie with us. We'll
Yeah.
get you down with a VB
Well, I'm
in
actually
hand.
going to go see my brother soon, but I went on Uber and ordered a kangaroo. So yeah, the Uber kangaroo should be here in like maybe about 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, ride it over there.
Yeah.
Bumpy ride. Don't take beer with you. Shake it up.
No, I've got Quad X, man. That's what I'm looking for. My what? Okay, the Australian stereotype. Fosters. That's what I've got. I got some Fosters. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
It's for any Americans
Uh,
listening. No one in Australia drinks Foster's. Foster's owns pretty much every single beer brand here, but no one drinks Foster's brand specific beer
it's such a
or
bad
shrimps.
stereotype from like the original Crocodile Dundee movies. No,
Yeah.
I must have only see kangaroos out in the middle of the bloody desert. Uh, the only time I've seen a koala, I've seen like two koalas in my entire life, like one at the zoo and one at a friend's house who lives up in the hills.
Yeah.
I have never had Fosters. I've
No, I
had
haven't
one
either.
VB. Yeah,
I actually drink VB on occasion, but that's because it's always on special.
so I'm gonna delete you from Facebook pretty much as soon as I finish it.
I've been told Foster's is like drinking Foster's is like punching yourself in the back of the head. That's what one of my friends has told me.
No, I don't even want to try it. I think the only Australian beer I really have is like maybe Cooper's, and that's like because it's local to me as well. Yeah, that's about it. I don't really drink that much beer. I'm a Scotch and whiskey kind of person, to be honest.
Mm.
Puts hairs on my chest. See, that's every one of those is a Scotch and Coke. So moving on because that's like completely off topic. Zeus teased a super small GTX 970 Direct CU Mini. So this thing is tiny, but it's perfect for mini RTX builds or super small gaming builds or like a LAN PC. Previously, we reported Gigabyte's GTX 970 ITX, which is pretty much the same thing. It's a single PCI Express 8-pin power, super small, a little bit bigger than the PCI Express connector itself. Single fan. It's got dual link DVI, DisplayPort, and HDMI. Other than that, we're looking. I think it's 17 centimeters long, so it's very very short. You can still SLR them, which is good. So you could have two of these in a system and have super amounts of power in a tiny little cube. But for land, I think that'd be great. I think this would be like the perfect card.
Yeah, I think it's interesting looking at like the Core V1 release from Thermaltake. I've actually bought myself one of those to try out with my new build, and that fits full-size graphics cards as well. So I wonder whether a lot of these case manufacturers are going to move more into the market where they can start fitting full-size graphics cards in their cases, and will we see these mini RTX cards start to phase out from there? But like you said, it's going to be so cute seeing someone with an SLI 970 Mini in their case. You could almost sit them behind each other. Like imagine if you had a motherboard that came out with, if you can fit a full-size graphics card, if you can fit two of these behind each other, then that'd definitely be something that'd be amazing. Imagine a motherboard coming out with
that. Because you have a system that's like, I'm trying to find something I've got on my desk that I could actually do this. So you could have a system that's maybe twice the size of that, because the video cards would be as wide as that. So you'd have the video card, the motherboard would be here. So that would be a little bit bigger than the motherboard. So your system would pretty much be a little bit bigger than that. So imagine walking into a LAN, everyone's like, lol, what's that? Like that must be like a little like 4 terabyte external drive or a small NAS. And it's like, no, this is my gaming build. 4770K, 16 gig of RAM, 480 gig SSD, and 2 GTX 970s. And the little peasant that has like Xbox One or something, like, oh, like what? You've got all that power? That's what I don't understand. Like, why couldn't the Xbox One or PS4 have one of those cards?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they use a single A pin. Like if they, again, yes, it's about $350, almost the price of an Xbox One by itself or a PS4 by itself. But if you're Microsoft and Sony and you went to a Zeus and you went, okay, guys, we want 20 million of those cards. Instantly, the price is going to go from $350 retail to more like $100 or less. And then you're going to have NVIDIA, because the roll-on effect of Zeus would be able to go to NVIDIA and go, well, instead of making 100,000 of these cards or maybe 10,000 of these cards, we need 20 million. instantaneously. TSMC and all that kind of stuff, they're all flooded with orders. The rollover effect and roll down effect of that would be absolutely huge. But that
That's
makes
right.
sense. So let's not do that. Let's not do that because that makes perfect sense.
I mean, going back to the space
Let's
thing
put
as
in.
well. I just looked up the Corvia one really quickly. Height, so 10. It's 27 centimeters by about 27 centimeters by 30 centimeters deep. Imagine that with an i7, even a last gen i7, like 370K dual 980s, 8 gig of RAM sitting there in one go. Like that's actually pretty friggin' amazing.
There you
All in
go.
one tiny little case.
Well, so you could, like you said, you can fit a full size card there, but it's nice and small, like one big fan at the back, front, two at the back. Like if you had like that card, it'd be really really good. Like
Yeah.
you
Are
could
you
definitely pull it
screen
off.
sharing? Because it's just come
Yes.
up with the logo for me at the moment. The screen share didn't work, I don't think.
Maybe it's not working for you. I don't know. Okay. Maybe.
I'm not
All
sure.
right. Anyway, I'm screen sharing. Maybe hopefully it turns up into uh, the full video.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh, but yeah, exactly. Like a case like that would be perfect because it's nice and small to take around with you. Like that's great.
Yeah, I really feel like these kind of mini ITXs are the cases of the future, like Steambox and stuff, which I'm sure we'll cover a lot more as they come closer to fruition. But, I got a Thermaltake Element G at the moment, super old case from 2008, bought it just for $50 second hand, and it's freaking massive. Like, when I take that to events, I could barely carry it in. But the best thing when you go to a LAN event, if you can carry your case, your monitor, and then have a backpack with all your peripherals and stuff in it in one go, one trip from your car down to the LAN, that's perfect, 100% perfect.
I used to go. Do you remember Reloaded Land in South
Yes. Yep.
Australia? Yeah.
Yep.
I used to actually I started the first organization with that, and when that was first made. Well, the name Reloaded. I don't actually think I've ever told this story. That was actually my name. We were sitting around drinking beer of all things, as we were talking about before, and they were saying, because it was BFO, which stood for Big F Off Land to another big land that was happening at the time. And
Mhm.
yeah, Reloaded started from that because I think the Matrix Reloaded came out at that time. So Reloaded, let's call it Reloaded. And
Yeah, I remember
I
that.
used to.
Went to the last one. I went to the last Reloaded, actually.
Oh really? Yeah. See, actually, well, I was probably there. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't work for TweakTown at that time, so. Um, but yeah, it was. It's good because after that, I started building small. Because I had such a big system, I used to take around like massive LCD. And I'm like, nah, never again. I'm building a small system. So I ordered. I sent Bitphoenix an email, and I've built a build guide on TweakTown for it. The Prodigy M. And I have like a 4770K, 16 gig RAM, dual SSDs, GTX 980s, and SLI. So I got my full PC. A serious machine in a case that's nothing. I can just and that's got two handles on it. So you just have I have my PC in one hand, my monitor, and I've got a bag for monitor, and my backpack. Perfect.
Yep.
It's the way
Yeah,
to do it.
exactly.
Land like a
Yeah.
boss.
And I feel like these mini ITX cases and like back to like we are saying about the graphics cards and stuff as well, it's all, I find it's trending. It just goes around in a big circle. At the moment in the Australian scene anyway, water cooling's massive. Like the Australian PC Gamers Facebook group with like 4,000 members or something. Water cooling's going skits on there. Thermaltake are releasing a whole new water cooling series line and stuff. But then people are going to start going into the mini builds again, and that's where these little cards come in handy. And obviously, this little 970 is not going to be as perfect as a full-size 970 is, but you're going to get pretty much exactly the same kind of features off it for a similar kind of price as well.
Yeah. I think that's, yeah, like I said, it does go full circle. And same with the graphics card market as well. You get, they go super big, like long cards, and then come all the way back down. They're super big, super long, all the way down. So it's good to see Asus and Gigabyte actually releasing like smaller cards. Like not everyone wants to have these huge cards, and it's like, well, now you don't need to.
Yep.
That's good. Speaking about stretching and changing things around, LG, which I've teased about this before, but we'll just quickly cover it. LG will supposedly unveil and hopefully launch its new G Flex 2 smartphone at CES 2015 in January. It's about a month and a couple of days from now. The original G Flex wasn't the best, but it was a good phone. But the new G Flex 2 will amp things up considerably. So LG is expected to unveil the G Flex 2 obviously in January, which should feature hopefully a QHD panel with the flex and curved kind of screen with the self-healing coating on the back. But we'll see. That's not a confirmed report at all. Continuing the smartphone news, Samsung is releasing a all-metal chassis-based Galaxy A7 smartphone, which went through the FCC a couple of days ago. So it's pretty much just like a run-of-the-mill kind of smartphone. So we've got a Snapdragon 615 processor, which is an 8-core 64-bit processor, so that's pretty nice. Adreno 401 graphics, 2 gig of RAM, 16 gig of NAND flash. It should have a 5.2-inch Full HD display, 12 megapixel rear-facing camera, and a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. We might see Samsung unveil it at CES. Again, who knows? It's just pretty much a rumor for now. But that's saying that Samsung said that they weren't gonna release as many smartphones this year. So don't know what happened to that.
It's interesting to note about the all metal frame as well. It seems that metal is the new in thing to do as far as these phones go. You know, like if you look at my S4 for example, you know, this plastic covering makes the back feel a bit cheap and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting because even like I read about the Linshofer i8, I think it's being released out of Germany as well, seeing a metal frame too, and you know, the I-bend and stuff.
It'd be good to see. I think Samsung, they've been taking flack for a lot of their smartphones being plastic and cheap looking and cheap feel. So they're probably going to be moving more towards an all-metal chassis, kind of to keep up with Apple in terms of the premium look, and as well, not just Apple. Like, a lot of people go, "Oh, Samsung are copying Apple," but HTC have had that look for quite a while as well, with the the 1M8 and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, even my Desire that I got in like 2009 was that kind of stuff.
That was a real, I love that. Was the first Android phone that I used, and I love that. It was a really well built.
Yeah. That lasted me 3-4 years. That beast.
yeah, I had mine for a while. I think I moved from that to the Galaxy S2, I reckon. I think that's what I did. Yeah, that was a big move. Going completely out of the realm that we would normally talk about is, I don't even know how to pronounce this, Toza, TZOA. It is a wearable enviro tracker. So it's a little sensor that you can wear. I don't know if it'll be like on your chest or on your head or on your wrist or somewhere. But it's gone to Kickstarter with the company hoping to raise $110,000 to get it off the ground. But the product, quote unquote, measures your personal air pollution and UV exposure in real time using advanced sensor technology. So it's a small round tracker that keeps an eye on air quality, UV light, humidity, and temperature, and all of that data gets blasted down to your sort of companion smartphone application. I don't know if it's going to be Android and iOS, but I'm sure that it will be. And then all of that data is then uploaded to a crowdsourced kind of pollution map. So if we're in Australia, so me and Chris have one, we're in a state across about 800 kilometres away from each other. He'd be able to see what the air quality is in my state, and I'd be able to see what the air quality is in his state, and we'd be able to go back to America and see the air quality there. So it's a good idea. I actually, when I was writing, I'm thinking, like, why? And the more I read about it, I'm like, well, this is actually kind of cool. Like, why don't we have this? It's obviously going to be a cheap thing to do, and you're going to be able to have people doing their own kind of personal research. So you might have the government go, oh, the air pollution in China is fine, where this will actually show that it might not be. So
yeah, sure, you can't see 2 centimeters in front of your face. Yeah, no, it looks interesting. I'm going to be very interested to see, like you said, how exactly it connects to you. Whether you Well,
I was actually looking at the picture there, and as I asked that, I looked at the picture. You see the second picture across? You can actually see. I'll put it on the. It looks like a clip.
Yeah, it looks like a little clip.
Screen share that if the screen share is actually working. Let's share that. So yeah, you can see here that it actually looks like a clip. So I'm guessing that might maybe clip to your clothes or maybe, hopefully. Looks kind of cool. I want one now. The company actually retweeted our article and said that they were happy to have us post on our site. So that was kind of cool.
I like this comment on here as well. Upon opening it and activating in a certain city in China, who would say welcome and then explode.
Yeah, it would. It'd be, because I can see that. I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah,
I can definitely see that happening. Oh, they've updated their page and we're now on their Kickstarter page. That's cool. It's like in the
Yeah.
media, and TweakTown's the third one down. Yes.
Gonna have a
That's because TweakTown's the best site on the internet, pretty much bigger than Google, Apple, and everyone combined. So
yeah,
that's okay.
exactly times three.
Times three.
Yeah.
All
But
the
our
other
best buddies
sites are
Ubisoft. We're
20%
taking a bit of
cinematic
a load.
fill. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think Ubisoft should acquire TweakTown, and that'll be a good collaboration. We could run Ubisoft, man. And if I ran Ubisoft straight away, I'd be like, all console games are cut. Stuff consoles, PC 1080p 60 minimum. All developers are doing this from now on. That'd be good.
Instead of
Uh,
cutting us, they need to cut some better developers. I think.
yeah, yeah.
Let's say smarter things anyway. Than 60 FPS looks weird, and look at that Hobbit movie. It's just destroyed and stupid.
Alex Hutchinson, I hope you do not have a good Christmas, and not in a bad way, but I hope that I don't know your turkey burns or something at 30 frames a second.
I hope that you sit at least 5 meters away from your 4K screen to prevent your eyes from going square.
How are you the creative director of one of the biggest companies in the world, directing the biggest game, one of the biggest games in the world, and you don't have a 4K screen? Like, what's he earning? Like $10,000 a year? Like, you don't earn enough money to be able to be like, I'm like, to me, I'm an enthusiast. Like, I wouldn't work for TweakTown if I didn't have passion for what I do, and I have so much passion. I love this job. I would be here forever if I can. And it's like I personally purchase high screen or high res screens and 4K displays and stuff like that because that's what I want to see. It's like if I was the creative director of Far Cry, surely I'd be on a lot of money. I wouldn't just be on $30,000 a year. So I would have a 4K display in my lounge room, and if not, I'd have a 4K display at home, and if not, I'd have a 4K display at work. It's like you telling me that every stage he doesn't have a 4K display? No, makes no sense. No sense. Speaking about what's in consoles, AMD power the consoles, the Xbox One and PS4 with APUs, and the company has had an event, I think it was last week or the week before, the future of computer, I think it was, and they said that by 2020, so about not even 6 years from now, that we're at the end of 2014, that they want to have 25 times, so 25 times, not 2 or 3, 25 times the energy efficiency of their APUs. How they're going to do that? They said, or their goals of reaching that energy efficiency is more power, more performance with less power, long battery life with sleek, lightweight form factors, cool and quiet computation, lower energy consumption and utility bills, lower total cost of ownership, and reduced environmental impact. So it's good to see them doing this. I wish they built this kind of energy efficiency and power into the consoles, but I don't. On one hand, I understand why AMD are going down this path of like wanting to create so much more power with less energy required for their APUs, but I think we're going to be seeing more of a push towards maybe AMD not concentrating towards actual physical desktop CPUs, because why do we need them? A $100, $150 CPU isn't that much slower than a $1,000 CPU because most of the compute stuff's being done on the GPU these days. Mm-hmm. So maybe AMD are looking at the future and going, well, we don't necessarily need a CPU that's going to be using 135 watts, and where this is actually going to go the other way around. So it makes sense.
Yeah, we might start seeing more motherboards with soldered-in CPUs as well. Like I bought an Asus one for my dad once. Had a included i3, I think it was, to put in his media PC in his cinema room and that kind of stuff. And this is technology that'll go well in that too. And then obviously the power saving is great for laptops.
I think that's the big point. Laptops. I think laptops and like all-in-one devices like tablets. AMD can see the future there, yep. which is good. And speaking of Intel, we reported that. So right now, Intel's Broadwell chips, which we're seeing finally come out now after being delayed for so long, they're arriving as the Core M range of processors in some of the latest notebooks. So a fanless design chip, which is great. But Intel obviously pushed forward much further than AMD in terms of pushing the process down and down and down. So Intel will reportedly shrink down to 10 nm by 2016 and hopefully even 7 nm by 2018. Which is just insane, considering that, say, back in 2005, we're at 65 nm, 2007 was 45 nm, 2009 was 32 nm, 2011 was 20 nm, and then it's only this year that we're really seeing 14 nm come into play, even though they promised it last year. So their old roadmap showed that 10nm was supposed to be coming out in 2015, but when I reported, I said 2016 because I think we're going to see it maybe a year late. 7nm we're going to see towards 2017, 2018. Which is going to involve some crazy, crazy technology like nanowires and stuff like that. Like the process that they're going to now is just mind blowing.
Hmm, definitely.
Speaking about Intel as well, they are going to be reportedly powering the next revision of Google Glass. So Paul, our enterprise storage editor, wrote up an article. I think it was just yesterday or the day before. He wrote up an article saying that the next revision of Google Glass is going to be powered by an Intel chip. So we don't know whether this is going to be the consumer version of Google Glass, which I don't think it will be. Maybe we might see one more developer edition released from Google before we see the jump to the consumer version. But it's interesting to see Intel get into wearables. I'm actually pretty excited because one of the big things that wearables is going to need going into the future is obviously a really, really decent chip that is fast but low power, low heat,
Tiny.
especially if something's going to be sitting on your face, and super small. So with Intel going towards 7nm and that kind of stuff, I think that's going to be great for Google Glass.
Yeah, I really hope that Google Glass gets into production models soon because it's already lost, it's already lost most of its hype. Like I remember the first videos that came out of the guy that was walking down a street looking for a coffee shop and then like FaceTiming his girlfriend who bought her flowers or something, sitting on top of a skyscraper and things like that. They went absolutely wild. But I feel like most people have just forgotten about it. If I go to one of my friends now, who are mild tech enthusiasts, most gamers and stuff, I'll have a chat to them and I can almost guarantee they would have forgotten about Google Glass's existence. It's not in the forefront of their mind anymore.
Well, I bought one at the beginning of this year, and for the last 6 months, it's been sitting there. It's actually broken. I was on a plane, and there's like so you're sitting. Google Glass is here, and there's like the little prism sits there, and on this side there's a bit of foil that stops the projector so it projects the image up onto the screen, but it stops it from the light leaking out. And that's all like faded away. So I've got to send it back, but I've been lazy. I apologize. I've got to send it back. But yeah, it's the application is good. Like I was in the States and I was doing kind of what you were saying there. Like I was walking walking on a road, and my wife called me on Google Hangouts, and I was able to hang out to her. She was able to see what I was seeing from Glass. So the application is there, but it was a little bit laggy. Not that much more than what my smartphone was. But I don't think it's ready for prime time yet. I really think the camera is pretty crappy. I really wish that was like 1080p 60 or 4K 30 before it goes mainstream. I really want to be able to just snap a photo and it's as good. Like I don't see why they can't put something similar to what the GoPro sensor is. Give me that quality, 4K 30, and imagine that. What would GoPro do? GoPro have this huge camera, but if I had it sitting here, and if I had like again 16 gig of storage is enough, and it really needs like 64 gig of storage, or at least 32. But I don't see it. I don't see it taking off unless Google do radical changes to it.
Yep. Yeah, you never know.
And our final story, the Finland schools, they are taking cursive handwriting out of their curriculum starting in 2016. I think it's autumn 2016, so about 18 months from now. And they're going to be replacing it with keyboard skills. A lot of people are two minds about this. They like it and they don't. For me, I learnt cursive. I changed schools about 2 or 3 times over my life. And one of them I went to, I did cursive, but I've never used it since. I have never written cursive, but I type ridiculously fast, like over 120, 130 words a minute.
Yep.
So my keyboard skills are great, and I type out of 1,000 situations, I type 991 to 1,000. I'd be typing. I don't write much at all, if anything at all. So I think it's great that they're teaching kids keyboard skills. But my brother and I had not an argument, but we had a heated discussion about this. He was like very against it because he's very old school. He's like, oh, kids should learn how to do handwriting and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yes, but they're not taking the handwriting away. They're just taking cursive away. In any job, you're going to be writing in legible text, which you're going to be writing just normal. You're not going to be writing it in cursive. Cursive is very like old kind of style of writing, and I think it's a good thing. Like I've got two kids. Like my daughter's 4, and I've got a 1-year-old, nearly 9-month old. 9-month old today, I think. So happy 9-month old birthday, Evelyn. But yeah, I'd rather them learn keyboard skills than cursive. Like I 100% want them to write. 100%, I'm not against that. But the keyboard skills is absolutely pivotal for me. Like I'll obviously be teaching my kids how to type at home anyway.
Yeah, cursive is old
But
technology that need to exist for
yeah,
sure.
I
There's
think it
no
should just
point
be
to it.
wiped away. It's
Not unless
just
you're an artist or something. I don't see any point whatsoever.
yeah,
But yeah,
and
keyboard skills is something that needs to be taught a lot more. I find, going through some of my friends and stuff, watching some people type on the computer, people who don't know how to touch type, people who do like the double pointers, they just like, typing like this and their face is like this far away from the keyboard and stuff. You find some people who can type faster on their phone, like 3 times faster on their phone than they can on the keyboard and stuff. But yeah, it's like, it's that people have to understand is exactly what you said, is this is cursive that's stopping, not handwriting full stop. They're not like, making kids not know how to fill out a form at the, like a tax form or something. You can still do that with
there's
your
more
hands.
important things that you should be teaching instead of cursive. Like here in Australia, obviously every education, all education is different across the world. But why can't they be teaching these kids, how to fill out forms and how to like what interest rates are for home loans? Like obviously in high school and how to cook and how to how to clean and they're more life skills. Like they don't teach anything in school. Like 90% of what I learn, apart from the basic stuff like English, basic maths, basic kind of science and stuff, like 99% of the science that I learned in school is gone because it didn't interest me.
Exactly.
99% of the maths is gone because it didn't interest me. And I used to argue with the teachers like when I was like 15, 16. I'm like, why am I learning algebra? I'm never going to use this. You will use this, Anthony, in the future. You will use this in every job. And I'm like, well, I'm 31 now, and I work for a tech site, and the only maths that I do is like 5.2 inch, smartphone screen, or what's 4096 memory, 4096 bit bus if it has 128 gig of bandwidth here. So that's the maths. That's about it. I don't need to learn algebra. Like, no, if I need to learn algebra, I've got Google. That's it.
The amount of things that I Google is ridiculous. The same way with I always got a calculator that's easy to open and that kind of stuff. And I do a bit of tech work on the side for medical centers and things like that as well, doing support for them. And it's the same kind of stuff. They expect you to know everything, which is quite funny, off the bat. But Google's your best friend. It's all about knowing how to utilize. It's all about knowing how to utilize your resources, really. That's what it is these days.
That's it. And Google is a resource. Like, unfortunately, that's it. And a lot of these teachers, they're like, oh, but you should learn it in your head. And it's like, but where did you learn it from? You don't, like, half these teachers, like, all I remember filling my time at school was like, the teacher would be going from a book, writing it up onto the board, and then I'll just write that down. It's like, that's not teaching me. Oh my God, that's like the worst way. Like I'm just getting bored. It's like whoever can write the quickest. Like that's it. And it's so stupid. I don't know.
There's a popular image that goes around social media a bit, which is what I didn't learn in school, which was like how to fill out a tax form and how to claim your tax and what a rent agreement means and this kind of stuff. But this is a good first step in that kind of direction of teaching people more, because we're firmly planted in the tech age now as well. Like when I went to school. When I went to school, it was when, in high school we had 1.2 gig Pentiums and things like that with, 256 512 mega RAM. And I feel like, after that, then the next generation went to school, they had dual cores, and the next generation went and they jumped from dual cores to, the octa cores and things like that. So we're firmly planted in the tech generation now. And, I've worked in the education department previously, and, a bit of the medical centers and stuff as well. And, a lot of those guys really don't know anything about computers whatsoever. And they're all moving to a digital age. They're all moving to digital technology. There's an incentive by the government. I think it was between $20,000 to $50,000 for medical centres like dentists in Victoria to move from a fully paper to a fully electronic kind of incentive. So it's not just random nerds on the internet that are trying to hack people and push iPhones to everyone. It's the government that's doing it as well. So I feel like this is a really good move in the future. And I'll definitely be following this. You and I'm sure will report as more things like this happen.
Definitely, because that's the driving force. Like my daughters, like I can see them growing up with not just computers, but like I've said to so many people, I think that the Oculus Rift and virtual reality, they're going to be huge educational tools because
Hmm.
instead of showing kids like, here's a book, here's how big the dinosaurs are, here's this dinosaur, and here's Tyrannosaurus Rex, and here's this, and you don't get it. You get a sense of scale because you're like, that dinosaur would be 2 stories tall, this dinosaur would be maybe 5 stories tall. But then if you've got VR and you can be like, all right, that dinosaur is that tall, and this dinosaur is like, all the way out there, you're gonna it's going to change education because you can be like, okay, kids, instead of reading about Paris, everyone put your Oculus Rifts on, let's go to Paris. And that's going to be the type of like the next gen. Like I'm actually excited, and a lot of people go, we don't need to have technology in schools. Like kids have too much technology at home, but it's like, well, then you don't use technology. Like so many of my friends are like, we don't let our kids use phones, and it's like, but then you sit on your phone all day and you have TVs and you have microwaves and fridges and everything electronic. What do you think that is? Like, sure, don't let your kid have a smartphone in their room. You have to teach them boundaries, but in education, they're gone for 6 or 7 hours a day. Like we walked my daughter through a potential school a couple of months ago, and they had, I think it was 6 iPads to every classroom, and there's about 20 kids a class. Like you were saying, oh, we had Pentium 1.2 dual cores, like, oh man, when I first started school, we had high school Pentium 75 megahertz, 75 megahertz with
Yeah.
like I think it was like 4 meg of RAM, and we had CRTs. We were the first school in my state to actually be fitted out with brand new computers, and we had the internet connection to the entire school. So for the entire, like, there was hundreds and hundreds of kids. We had two 128K ISDN connections. 128K. So I was downloading stuff off the internet at like 20 kilobytes a second. I'm like, yes, this is the super information highway. Yes, 20K a second. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Now it's like my phone does 4G. I get like 120 megabit on my phone. It's like,
That's right. We're
wow.
both sitting on NBN connections, when we're plugged into Ethernet with like just under 100 down.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
and 4G in Australia is world class. Like I think we are I posted a story on TweakTown a couple of months ago where the highest average speed for 4G in the world,
Mm.
which is
Hope
which is
this,
great. Yeah.
hope this now transfers across to wide internet connections so we can get out of the
Well, that's
third
what I don't
world.
understand. Like, why we don't just Australia doesn't just go full 5G? We're already out pretty much on the doorstep of 5G. I
Hmm.
think it's handsets now are pretty much the limitation. Where in America the speeds are a lot lower, like 30, 40 megabit. Um, but yeah, over here it's really good.
Yep.
So that's it for the week. We hope you have enjoyed your time here. We've got 2 viewers. Yes, 2 viewers. Hi to whoever it is. Whoever you are, comment on our Facebook page. Do it right now before we leave.
Yeah, tell
I'm
us.
demanding the last viewer do it.
Might even
I
burn.
will give you an internet hug. Let's see. Come on, you can do it, viewer. Go to the TweakTown Facebook page. I've pinned it to the top for now. And comment and let us know who you are, and we will mention your name on our podcast.
That's
You
right.
have 30 seconds.
Come see us at an event. We'll give you a free shirt.
Yes. Fly to Australia. I'm F5 in this page. It's probably my mum or something.
Hi, Mum.
Well, they. Hi, mum. What's up? No comments yet? Come on, you can do it. I wonder if the viewer is you. No, because you're not viewing, you're involved.
No.
I wonder if we can click the viewer. No, we can't click anything. All right, I'm going to finish this podcast. So thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thanks, Chris, for joining me. We will be
Problem.
back probably early next week for our game podcast, and about this time next week for the tech podcast. This will be up in about in a couple of hours probably because it's got to do all the processing and stuff on YouTube. But thanks for tuning in.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.